Okay, what we're looking at is getting some basic walls set up for our scene so that when we start putting together our basic modular pieces, we'll have something that looks like this. And what I got here are several different wall sizes that I want to actually kind of think about how I could rebuild them to where they will be more effective and more modular and reusable across a bigger scene. It's going to sacrifice some aspects and some accuracy on the space, but what I set myself up to do is get a basic wall size and then kind of noodled out where the door size would be, and then try to figure out where the basic middle ground would be, and then I'll basically make everything clean and ready to go. So without doing anything more than that, I'm going to close this scene out and focus on this one. So I'm looking at this, and this is set up to where it's basically about I think it's 6.5 meters by 7 1/3 meters across in terms of the steps. It's almost 6 by 6, almost 7 by 7, kind of in between. And I'm looking at this wall here in the interior that breaks up the whole middle space. And I see two walls that look very close to the size, and then I see how they can fit the door space in there. And I'm kind of eyeballing this door and the bathroom door and the closet door or the pantry door and trying to think about, well, I know in my game I'm going to make every door the same. That way we build one door mechanic and we can just dress it up with different textures as we go. But I want to actually have a different setup when it's coming to the rest of the walls. So let's start off with a basic box. This character reference we have here in the middle is, I believe 2 meters tall, which is just over 6 feet. It's like 6'1", but you know, if we think like the Marvel way, all our superheroes are going to be basically around 8 feet tall. We're taking that kind of concept. All of our characters in this game that we are making are going to be 6 feet tall, so we'll just live with it. So I'm just going to start with a basic box, and I'm in the perspective view, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball the length of the space here. I'm going to go ahead and go to where they would actually meet, and then just make it a little taller than the person, thinking about what we see in reality. That's probably like an 8 feet tall wall. I could see that being in a hotel or a concrete high-rise, something pretty uniform and basic but not too fancy. If we wanted to make it a little bit shorter, we could do that as well. So we can look about what would be here, and if we leave this whole door frame size, all we have to do is add the frame for the door. So that means we can say that's 240 centimeters. We'll make that 265. Whoopsie. 265. And then we'll make this, this is 16. I think we could probably do a little bit better than that. We could probably make it just 15. It's probably not going to be realistic, but again, we're not worried about load-bearing walls or anything. Alright, so now what I want to do is kind of think about how the rest of this setup works with the rest of my house. I don't believe this is going to be my final setup. I'm pretty sure it's not, but let's go ahead and see what happens. So while I've got things zeroed out here a little bit, I can go ahead and take the UVs and get to them now, but I'm not too worried about that yet since it's a box. So what I'm going to do now is just hold shift and move this over into the X to kind of get this figured out. I'm going to make it an instance so that I can do different things to one and it'll affect both of them. And this is what an instance allows us to do. And so that allows me to kind of make some quick changes. What I want to do here now is look about what my door size will be. And if I go ahead and move these together, keep them as an instance because they're still the same wall, that kind of makes me a little nervous about the size of the door, but let's see what happens. So I'll select one, and I'm going to hold shift and just clone it, put it in the middle of the door. But this time it's a copy because I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to make it to where it'll fit inside the space here. About as snug as perfect as we can make it. Try to make it 140. It'll be a little gap, but it's alright. Not too bad. So we're talking centimeters of terms of space. And the door will fit inside this frame more than likely. That way we can make it a standard asset inside the game engine and reuse it often. Let's go ahead and change the color just so we can have an idea of what it looks like. Now I'm looking at this back wall here, and if I go here and look at this, this is where I'm kind of coming up with the realization that this measurement is going to be a pain in the ass. because this doesn't match these two. So what I want to do is now consider where my actual common ground is on this basic shape. So I'm going to actually delete those. I'm going to make a new copy of this door. It's just a box still. Copy. And I'm just going to extend the width to match the whole width of the back wall. And since this is a box of a house, this is going to be pretty easy to get going from this point on. Now, what I want to do at this point is I want to consider how I can use the same size wall to create the front of the house and the door frames in the center. So I'm going to let the software help me out with my measurements and my accuracy. I'm going to go into the width segment and I'm going to make it 3. Hit F4 on my keyboard. So now I can see what's going on here. So make this a different color. And so if I go into wireframe mode, you can kind of see the difference that I'm talking about. This is the hallway that we created first. This is the doorway that we created. Oh, this is the character. This is the actual doorway that we were able to create. And now here's the actual new walls we're going to be off of this. And we can see where all the different sizes all kind of fit. So it's a little off in some areas. We're looking at like what looks almost like a substantial foot in space, and that could create a lot of problems down the pipeline when we start looking at multiple houses and multiple options. We probably still have to have some kind of unique measurements between certain walls, but at this point I'm going to let this wall here, this green one, be the actual main focal point of my measures. Now there's a couple ways we can look at getting this done, and I think when I start doing UVs you may get a better idea of what I'm looking at and what I'm referring to. So let's go ahead and first off, let's name this guy here. He's going to be our base wall. So I'm going to say wall base 00. So here's our basic shape. I'm going to eventually have him at the origin so that when we export him out of this software and into a game engine, the origin will be based off of this and not off the object space in 3D Scene. It'll make more sense the more times you do it, but basically anytime you export an object out of 3ds Max, Maya, Modo, Blender, whatever, you need to have it actually origin of your scene, and that's where the pivot point will take in the game engine. So if I put this object here in my scene, the pivot point is going to be right there, and that allows that rotational value to be a little easier for me to navigate when I'm placing walls. For right now, for all of what we're working on, having it in the center is fine. So we basically, again, I have this wall base 01 or 00. Let's go ahead and do the unwrap, see what we're looking at. It's not going to be anything you guys should not expect. It's just a box. We've done it before. Flatten the mapping. Alright, let's go ahead and hide this. So here's what I'm looking at in terms of aspect ratio. I see this here, and I can move these little trim pieces out of the way because they're not that hard to deal with. I've got this huge gap right in the middle of my space, and I'm thinking maybe there's a better use for my UVs than this. But I'm still in discovery stage, so I'm not too sure yet. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and just get the UV set up for right now, and just clean up the islands using selecting edge, hidden stitch selected, and then just repack it, scale everything down, and you know, like I can leave it like this. I could definitely anticipate maybe adding trim around the door, trim up top the crown and the base molding, all those things, kick plates, chair rails, things of that nature. So while I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing with this particular object, I'm going to go ahead and leave it alone and collapse it down. Now, like I said, I'm going to move it to the center of the universe. Oopsie. Alt Q to get it isolated. I'm going to right click on here to get it zeroed out. Since I built it in the perspective view, I'm scaling, the height's going to be going up into the Z value, so all I have to worry about is the pivot point's right at the origin, right at the base of the object. So now when I take this into Unity, that's where my pivot point's going to be, and that's pretty damn effective. Alright, so from here, what I want to think about is these walls that I want to build. And now they're smaller than this one, just looking at this measurement. And again, this is that subtle difference between what we want to do as a in the 3DS, in the user side, or the gamer is going to be, versus what we're going to be using in terms of building the rest of the level out. Right now, it's not going to be a real issue for me to go ahead and keep that wall size. So the easiest thing in the world to do is, while I got the UV set up, I'm just going to go ahead and just duplicate or clone off a little segment and just cap the hole. So what I'm going to do here is click on, I'm in polygon mode. I'm selecting all the polygons that I want, and I'm going to hit detach. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to detach as a clone. And what that does is it breaks off those faces, but doesn't actually detach the selected object. It makes a copy of the faces I've selected and creates a new piece of geometry. That's going to be another wall. So I'm going to say small because I don't have a naming convention yet. But I know that when I look at my scene, I'll see wall, then I'll see wall small. And these are both beginning pieces, so they're 0, 0. Get out of sub-object level. Go select that little bad boy. I'm going to isolate, Alt-Q. And I want to go ahead and cap this up. So I go to 3, which is the border. I just hit cap. I'm going to probably have to get those UVs set up. Now I want to get my object in the right place. So I'm going to move it in sub-object level, because if I move the top level, I'm moving that and the pivot point. But if I move the sub-object, it's just moving the vertices. I can put that right where I want it. Do some fine trimming details. Control A. Select everything. There we go. Now I hit here, and now my pivot point's right where I left it. And now my wall's on that right there on that center point. So now I've got this wall base. Get out of that. I'm thinking, let's give it a different color so we can make it so we can see the difference. All right. So now I'm thinking, well, now my doorway is going to be that big. So let's go ahead and select that piece. Hold Control, select that piece. Now I'm going to move this over here. So this is my door basic frame. I'm going to just have it right there and kind of think about how I want to place my door in here. So here's where we get to our first complex model. And it's not that hard. We've done a little bit of work like this, but I'm going to start off with just selecting the front and back face of my walls. And I'm going to just do a quick inset. Inset's like a chamfer or a bevel, but it just kind of creates geometry in the middle. Alright, and it actually creates the actual connecting geometry. So I don't have n-gons, I have nothing but quads. Now I'm going to delete those. Now I have a hole here. I go to border, select both borders, and I can hit bridge, and it'll create the cap for me. So now I have basically a big hole in my wall. Alright, I was just using inset. Now I deleted the inset faces, and I use bridge, and I use borders to bridge the borders, and it creates a nice little piece of trim in here. Does that mean my UVs are clean? Probably not. But that's okay. I can fix them. I've got some basic ideas of what's happening already. Those are all the geometry that I just created, plus that extra piece that I created. I can just flatten those. Now that I've got all that set up, I'm going to repack it. Everything's kind of proportionate. Is this my final door scene? No. No, I've got some other issues I got to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and just collapse it. All that did was kind of get a rat's nest, flatten it out, kind of map it out, and I can just kind of move on knowing that there's some work done. Now I'm just going to move from vertices. I'm going to go to vertex mode, select some vertices like this. I'm going to select this bottom 2 or 4, excuse me. Slide that down so we have like a kick plate. And if you want to get the reference just right. So where is it? I have to actually look over here. So we're looking at those two. So I'm going to go ahead and get a vertex and add those two to my selection. We can slide this thing basically into between here. I'm just going to position the door where I see fit, moving vertices. That's a big door. Let's go ahead and drive our car through it. But okay, that's not a big deal. Now, like we were talking about in the game level, this right here, that's that little rock that you're going to trip over. You have to jetpack over. So the way to get rid of that, and I want you all to see how I do this because this requires a little bit of precision. Not much. Not a lot of stuff I do has to have that precision yet. You can always add it later. But I've got this piece, and the thing I want to be aware is look at all the geometry I'm about to delete. So I delete that, and you can see how it's crooked. So I just move those down to get them squared away. Now I have this problem where I'm not going to be too accurate. Like we've got these razor mice, which are very fast, real hyper response time. It's for professional gamers. So what I can do here, so I'm going to select all my vertices on this bottom plane, and I'm going to scale them. Just scale them flat in the Z. Just do it one more time. Clicking left click and holding, and now those things are pretty much flat as they can be. They're off, but I can actually go into the move tool now and just slide them down and get them right where they need to be. And then at that point, I have two borders, two holes. Select one border and cap it. Select the other border and cap it. Now, I just went through and made a wall with a door and a wall, and in the process, I made a wall with a window. So that would be the all's challenge for this. I'm going to go ahead and end this video and post it to YouTube so you guys can grab it. Hopefully that'll show you guys some things. But in the meantime, just taking a look at what's going on already. I've got one wall here. I don't want you. Got that wall. I got this wall. Just based on these two things, I can start building my city. May not be perfect, but that's okay. And you're going to find you're going to have, like, you don't want gaps, of course, because that's where the light will sink through. What you want to do, if there's overlap, you're going to have some parallax, but you can put it in a corner. You can put some nice details in there, such as decorations, trim, make it a darker light so the light doesn't play too much in there. Lots of little things you can do to cover it all up. But there's our basic beginnings of building this house. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end this and see if you guys can go forward from there.